This episode of Let's Talk College has a couple of technical items I want you to know about in advance. First, we have a little bit of an echo when I'm talking. This is the result of the remote interviews. I've tried to eliminate it as much as possible, but it is still noticeable. I apologize. Fortunately, Eric does most of the talking in this episode. Second, about 30 minutes into the conversation, I had a computer stopping event on my side of the recording. We recovered, but there is a slight disruption. Thank you for your patience. If you enjoy Let's Talk College, please share it with your friends on social media. Hello, I'm Shane Bybee. I've worked with students for almost 30 years and have spent the last 10 years guiding high school students on their journey to college. One thing I've discovered is that everyone's college experience is different. That's what this podcast is about. What are the things families really need to know about college? Today I'm joined by Eric Nietubicz, and Eric is a student of mine, a former student of mine. You're always students of mine, right?
Yep.
From Creekview High School. Golly, Eric, did you graduate, what, like 4, 6, something like that?
05, yeah.
05. So, yeah, probably that's when that would have been my next to last year at Creekview, I think, then I would have been working with you. So, what are you up to now?
So I'm a photographer, cinematographer, and I also work in the music festival industry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place.
How'd you get there?
Well, in high school I wanted to be an actor, so I actually left and went to USC to be an actor, and in my third year there, I shattered my ankle, and I had a reconstructed surgery on my ankle, which caused me to kind of rethink some stuff out, and ended up going to Texas Tech for a year. And after there, I was like, I want to be on the other side of the camera. So I got up and went to Florida from coast to coast, and decided to go to college out there at Full Sail and get behind the camera. And then, one job led to the next because I'm a freelancer. So
what does that mean? Oh, you're a freelancer. What are you doing?
So freelancing means that I'm basically a contractor in the industry. So I'm a grip and electrician on larger sets on lower sets. I'm the lighting guy, and I can also direct. Worked on multiple commercials around the United States, to working on major features like Queen of the South, to The Gifted, not The Gifted, The Chosen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I worked on the pilot on that one. And yeah, so, do a lot of corporate stuff as well. And then, like I said, I also, because of my grip background, which gripping is basically supporting any other department on a film set.
Okay.
So with that, I met a guy, and he was like, "You're the hardest working guy I know. You want to come out and do these film festivals and come and live wherever for a couple months." Like I did EDC in Vegas, and I lived there for 3 months setting up the largest rave in the United States. So,
and for a couple of months, took a couple months to set it up.
Yeah, we actually did the largest turf drop in the world, and I was running the teams for that. So I ran a team of 30 people, and we were setting out turf. And we set out 1.7 million square feet of turf. And
like real grass turf, or are you doing like an artificial surface?
Artificial, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're on concrete, and so we were nailing it in and had to come up with the system to make sure that we were on track at all times. So,
Very.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That not where you saw yourself at 17, though, right?
No, my 17 self thought at this point, I would be famous. I've been in movies, and be the heartthrob of some TV show or something like that. But life takes you in weird ways, and being in this industry, like when a job knocks at your door, you kind of got to take it and see where life takes you there.
So everything changed from a broken ankle. So
yep.
How'd you break your ankle? What brilliant thing were you doing that happened?
So I actually got hit by a car riding a bicycle. And because I was a dancer, I actually didn't break it then, but I had hairline fractures all and up and down my leg. I actually bent the bike and then rolled up onto the car. And then before all that healed, I turned around and stepped on a skateboard at a friend's house and twisted it, and boom. And, I remember driving, my friends were laughing at me because they wanted to call the ambulance, and I was like, no. And so we were actually driving to the hospital, and I looked down and my ankle was just kind of moving, and you're like, oh man. And we get into the x-ray, and it's never a good sign when the guy doing the x-ray goes, ooh, that's bad. And I'm in California. I only have friends around me. Parents are here. And I remember calling, my parents and going, I'm going to have surgery, and pretty major surgery. And, 13 screws and a metal plate later, in a span of this much in my ankle, you can still see the screws and still see the ankles. I was told actually I wouldn't walk without a limp. Which was kind of the big thing. Obviously, that is not the case anymore. I work on my feet constantly, so just shows determination will get you where you need to. So,
well, so the dance, was that just not an option anymore?
Yeah, I didn't have the flexibility as I did.
Okay.
Also, the pain. It's kind of painful when you have screws inside the joint. So. It was one of those. It's like I didn't have it.
Wow. Well, before we get into like the path then after that, I do want to say something, because one of the things for me that I loved about you as teaching you in high school was, and if you remember Heather Alexander, she sat down and talked to me before you even started your class, and she was like, all right, you need to know something, because you know where this is going. I can see it on your face now. Because here's the deal for you, and this is the thing why you wanted to be an actor. You just weren't a kid who had aspirations of being an actor. You were a state champion, first team, all cast, state champion, one act actor. Like, you were, in your class, one of the best actors coming out of Texas in the class of 2005. Like, that's like not debatable, right? It's we can go and find the receipts on that.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize about you, and the reason I loved, you talk about that hard work that the guy recognized in you. They recognized that work early, because you have one of the worst cases of dyslexia of any student I ever worked with. Like, you and I know you worked so hard. Do you feel comfortable talking about that? Are you like, you see me down? No, Bobby, I'm good.
I actually do talk about this quite often, because I meet a lot of dyslexics. Especially young dyslexics over the years, and also teachers. So a lot of my friends that went into teaching always seem to call me up and ask how to teach a dyslexic student. One, on that, every way is different. I don't think there's a set way. I am considered one of the most dyslexic cases out there. In college, I actually got hooked up to brainwaves to read, and for years, the Dyslexic Conference, my brain was shown of how to see what it is, which is kind of a cool little thing. But what would you like to know about being dyslexic, I guess?
Well, I think one of the things we talked about, because you were an actor, right? So you had to memorize a ton of lines. You came up with a process for that, and I'd love to find out how you came up with what the process was, but then how you came up with that process.
Well, I guess the first one is that I had a great support team. I had great teachers like you that understood, and actually, my language arts and English teachers were probably the best at understanding my disability than a lot of the other teachers. So basically, I learned early on that I could listen to something and take it in. And if I listened something to 3 times, I was almost 90% memorized on it.
Wow.
So I would have friends read me the script 3 times, and then I'm like, I'm on. And that's kind of what ended up happening. And then same with classes. Like, I didn't want to stare at a book. I wanted to see you talk, hear what you were saying to contain it. And so that was my process of sitting down and having somebody just constantly read this to me. Luckily, technology has now grown a little bit that I can have computers and stuff like that read to me. So,
weren't you doing like a recording? You had the whole play recorded, like somebody else's lines, and then that was for your cues or something?
Sometimes, depending on how big it was, like I would walk around. So if my friends couldn't just read it 3 times right then, I would have them record. So at home, I could practice my lines, and like when I was looking at the piece of paper going like, I know this is my line, but I don't know that word. What is that word? I could go back and my friend had read it for me. So that was one way, obvious, that I kind of figured out how to do that.
Okay.
Because back then, we didn't, like I said, we didn't have computers. The technology of reading through a computer was just getting started. And also talk to type was also just getting started. So I couldn't go and like highlight that one word and, go, what is that word? It didn't exist at that time.
You couldn't like nowadays when you're reading on a Kindle and you can just push the word and it looks it up for you.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Do you read now? Do you try to read now, or do you listen to books or anything?
I am a very active Audible listener. Yeah. So here's kind of the interesting thing is like growing up, when people went to like spring break or summer, when we came back to school, everybody was like, oh, I just read this awesome book. Well, I couldn't do that. And obviously, so it kind of frustrated me early on in like elementary school and stuff like that. And it's like, I want, stories. Like I always sought out stories more than a lot of some of the other kids, I guess, because I couldn't just pick up a book. So my dad is also highly dyslexic, and Audible, right around in college time or high school, college, started doing the sign up Audible. We were actually one of the first ones to sign up. And me and my dad still have an account together. We have a huge database of Audible books, genres from all over, and I listen to all of them. So yeah, I mean, I constantly want to absorb stories. I actually walk around with headphones on a day-to-day basis, listening to an Audible. So
yeah. What are you listening to nowadays?
So I'm kind of on a sci-fi kick, I guess. So I just listened to the entire series of The Wheel of Time. It's a epic series, 13 books. Each book is like 45 to 50 hours long.
It's called The Wheel of Time?
The Wheel of Time. So if you
Wheel of Time.
If you like Lord of the Rings,
okay,
this he's considered this series was considered like what is it? The Lord of the Rings of our time. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Yeah. So, great series, awesome. Also dabbling in finance, stocks, reading at this point, and also just read a really interesting book a couple months ago called what was it? The six drinks of history. And so it kind of like goes through like first water, and then it, from water it goes to mead, and, kind of takes you through steps of the history of the human race, I guess, but like through the drinks that they're doing. I don't know. It was kind of a fascinating look.
Yeah. So have you Did you do Lord of the Rings? I'm sorry,
I did.
not Lord of the Rings. I meant Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah. Did the Games of Thrones as well.
Are we ever going to get book 7?
I don't think so.
So no, it's just going to end.
No.
Have you done the Expanse series?
I have not.
It's good. I'm on Caliban's War right now. I did Leviathan's Wake. It's really good, and it's cool. Have you watched the show at all? The Expanse?
No, not yet.
So they do a really cool job of taking things from of making that novel work for TV. They do a really good job, and there's a little bit of detail. It's like Game of Thrones, right?
Right.
If you read the books and you watch the series, like the Red Wedding, like when you knew that season was coming up, and you were like, "Oh my God, no! How are they going to even do this?" And you we're anticipating it for weeks in advance. Like there's so many things about that, or there's all these little details like that. And the Expanse, they're past the end of the books now, I think. So this last season, their last season's coming up. And there's been a whole lot of stuff about will the Expanse make the mistakes that Game of Thrones made? Because that last season was such a let's just rush through everything and wind up every plot point. But it's really good. And it's good writing. I'm enjoying it. So I'm about to get into Cal Newport too to see if I can't get my life on track finally. So you head off to USC. When you hit USC your freshman year of college, what was the plan at that point? What were you majoring in? What was the thoughts? What were the thoughts?
So I was a BFA acting major, and I was also dancing. The game plan was to get through college. USC as a BFA, we had a showcase our senior year where agents came and you can immediately, start working. A lot of my friends, there's 12 of us in that class, did just that, and are now famous and well-known and all that stuff.
Can I stop you? Wait, sorry, there were 12 of you in that class.
Yeah, there's 12.
The freshman class, I think that's what people don't understand. My niece is wanting to do musical theater. Mm-hmm. This year's been terrible for musical theater applicant because a lot of people deferred. Their classes are smaller. All this stuff is going on, so there's fewer spots. There's more people doing it. There's a lot of crazy things going on. I don't think they understand. You said there were 12 out of all. I mean, let's just think about that, right? Eric Nietubicz graduating in Texas from Creekview High School in Texas, top actor in Texas coming out of Texas that year. And there's 50 of those, right? There's 50 boys and there's 50 girls in the country. So there's 100. So if all 100 of those applied for those 12 spots, that's a 12% admission rate.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a lot more than 100. So there were 12. That's wild. Okay. Anybody we know of that was in that class that you can
do a shout out? So Troy and Belisario, which was one of the main characters of Pretty Little Liars, was in that class. So if you would recognize some of the ones, the faces in certain things. So you've seen them on commercials, you've seen them in series. The class above me, if you watched True Blood, the redhead, the daughter, she was above me. So yeah, I knew some people, we'll say it that way, and still connected with some of them. Like, we were just actually, because of the year of COVID, we started a BFA group chat again, because we lost some of our mentors this year from our teachers. So it was one of those, is like, oh man, this is hard, So we started getting back to having those conversations over the years. So.
Okay. So the plan at USC was to go into acting, or to become an actor. The program sounds like the program is really geared toward, you go through it your senior year, you are getting signed with an agency.
Yeah.
And I know so little about that world.
And I did too. And that's why I went to USC to try to figure that out. And I was a little naive about it, to be honest. So not knowing things was hard. And I also got wrapped up into the whole university crazy life. I was young and I wanted to party a little bit. So, to be honest, and yeah, and eventually broke my ankle. So
we talk with parents a lot about the Come to Jesus meeting that usually happens in December of a student's freshman year of college.
Yeah.
Because the student goes off to college and discovers the combination of beer and a lack of parental supervision. So has its impact.
It does.
So you break the ankle, you come back to Texas. You decide to go to Texas Tech. What did you study at Tech?
Theater, still.
Okay, still theater.
Yeah, I decided still do theater. My brother was there, so that was one of the reasons why I was like, hey, I'll go check out, US or Texas Tech, because my brother went for 2 semesters. I didn't like any of it. And partly was because this is kind of the weird thing of transferring from states is they didn't take very many of my credits from USC.
Okay.
So I had already done theater history, and the theater history teacher at Texas Tech was one of the outgoing theater teachers and in the nation. So she didn't think that my teaching at USC was good enough, so she refused to take that credit. And then, it was just all around kind of messed up. So it felt like I was basically starting over again. However, luckily, I actually met my best friend out there. So there was a good reason for going. He's still my best friend to this very day. And that's why I believe that I had to go to Texas Tech and to figure out what my next chapter of life was.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's one of the things we talked about. This happened for the class of 2020 last year a lot. The high school students, when they realized that their freshman year of college was not going to be what they were expecting, and they talk, mourning for the future that isn't going to happen. Yeah. And for you, obviously that's what's going on there. How'd you cope with that? Realizing that it was going to go a different direction.
Probably not well. Looking back at it, college was a blur for me because it's one, like you said, you're young. You're finding out more about yourself, and you're having to do some adulting, but not really. And I took out loans for both. I went to 2 of the most expensive schools in the nation, and that still haunts me to this day. All I could think about was I just want this degree, because if I got this degree, then my life would be okay. And I also thought, oh yeah, and I can party on the way. And so there was ups and downs. There's moments that I was extremely depressed because of leaving USC. There's moments that I was super excited, like I said, to go to Full Sail because it's this is a new start. But walking into Full Sail, I was the old guy. I had already been in college for 4 years. So, and they took 2 credits. So, I was starting over.
Full Sail, a lot of people aren't going to know that. The thing I always tell people, because I'm a tech grad, class of 91, and grew up in Lubbock. And so I always tell kids that the hardest part about tech is an experience in a school. It's a great job. But the hardest thing about tech is it's in Lubbock, Texas. There is nothing in Lubbock. When I was growing up, we had Reese Air Force Base and TI. So you had a couple of other things that were there. That's not there anymore. So it's only, and which is cool, right? Because it's all about the university, everything, university and cotton farming. That's the 2 things that Lubbock has. And so, so it's all about the university, and that's really cool. Even last night, I watched the game last night when we lost to Arkansas in the very last second.
Yep.
But that's hard. It's definitely flying in is quite an experience. If you fly into Lubbock, Texas, and you see the patchwork quilt that is the land around it, And so, we don't go back. My family's not there anymore, so we don't go back anymore. But yeah, that's the hard part of Lubbock.
Well, and coming from LA
Yeah,
to
holy
Lubbock,
cow.
I mean, literally
In
anything.
2005,
Well, I mean, at that point it was what, 2009,
7 or so, 8.
8 or 9, and it was, I literally had anything at my fingertips. If I wanted to go and actually go to like Chinatown where no one spoke English, just to have a true experience.
Very few people speak English in Lubbock as well. So it's also that.
That is true, but they all speak the same language. It's not a melting pot. So
yeah.
And that's something that I really loved about LA is I could just get up and go experience something new instantly. And Lubbock, I walk in and I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. Everybody's the same, or, you kind of have your niches and that's it.
Yeah, and it's such a regional school too. That's the other thing about Tech is, Tech's mission as a university is to really mostly educate people out in West Texas. We have some people from the Metroplex and stuff that go out there, but the number one mission is to provide college degrees for people. The fact is still 80% of people who graduate from college will end up, or 80% of people who go to university will end up within 200 miles of the university they graduate from. Like, that's a weird statistic that's out there. Wow. That's kind of the regional goal of Tech, is to provide West Texas with college-educated individuals. So we see plenty of Tech stickers here in Dallas, but that is kind of still that's why people talk about in-state versus out-of-state tuition, and why out-of-state tuition is always so much more, and that's the biggest reason for it. Is that the out-of-state candidate probably isn't going to end up living there. They're that 20%. So. And then Lubbock's still having a hard time keeping people there, though, because that's why they're going to Dallas and they're going to Houston and stuff like that. Great engineering programs at Tech, but not known for its theater department.
Some of my friends would say otherwise.
It's a good, there's no knock on it. It's a good theater department.
Oh yeah.
But it's just that's not if you go to Tech, you're going architecture, engineering, yep. Education. That's one of the big functions of Tech, is to provide teachers for that area. So, well, then you went to Full Sail, and I was going to look it up a minute ago, but I didn't get distracted. So, Full Sail is a for-profit university, right?
It is.
Yeah, and so a lot of people aren't going to know about Full Sail. How'd you find out about it?
So I just started searching best film schools.
Okay.
And Full Sail popped up. It's a nonprofit. It is.
It's a nonprofit or a for-profit?
It's for-profit. It is a trade school. So they do film, graphics designing, video game editing, like building, music. So if you want to be like a DJ and all that, they have programs for that. And I believe they have more programs. I don't stay in the loop as much as I should. With what's going on with them, but I know they're still growing like crazy, and partly it's because they have all the gear. They spend all their money on getting the newest and the greatest equipment. So when you walk in, you're literally hands on with the equipment that the pros are doing. So, and it's a short program. So it was a 2-year program. Every month was a different class. It was 24/7. I had classes at 1 o'clock in the morning that started. And so, you were constantly going.
So you say that's the difference, because it is a for-profit. Do they do anything like, all those English classes or math classes you had to take as prerequisites, that 60 hours of core classes that you have to have? Did Full Sail require any of that?
They are. They do. So your first 3 months is that of the 2 years, 3 to 4, because they do have a what is it called?
Is it an accreditation?
Yes, they do have accreditation. Okay. So because of that, they have to have those classes, and so we did have to do. Luckily, I didn't. So I actually skipped a little bit and didn't have to do the first, like the math classes and the English classes because I had already done it.
Now, were you on campus or online for Full Sail?
I was on campus. So back then they didn't have an online program that came after me. We were also the last class to do actual film. So in our photography class, they went to digital after me. And one of the things that they provided was a digital camera for every student. That was the other like really cool thing that I was like, oh, I'm going to go in and get this really nice laptop, that they provided, aka I paid for.
We're going to provide you with a laptop. No, I'm providing you with my tuition.
Right. And so they gave people cameras after us, but we actually used film for the last time. So I actually have a degree in science of film and not of digital video, which is kind of cool because I'm one of the last generations that played with both sides.
That's great. That's only 10 years old. That's crazy that you're going to have people going into the film industry who've never touched film and saw digital video.
My cousin's that way right now. He's about to graduate and he's never actually touched an actual filament, which is kind of crazy for me.
Wow. And so you had to do the developing and all of that whole processing of it. That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, I in college years ago, I worked in a theater, a movie theater, the Winchester. Now, it would have been gone by the time you were there. But I remember having to splice film together. That was the most film experience I had. Well, then let's talk about something kind of you touched on a minute ago, and this is certainly getting in the news quite a bit. You said loans. You have a lot of loans.
Yep.
USC today, I want to say, is around $70,000 a year full price. I don't know Full Sail off the top of my head, but I'm sure because it is a for-profit university, they usually are a little bit steeper. Yep. One of our second episode of the podcast was with a student, Jamie. She's at NYU, graduating this year from NYU. And Jamie said she has $100,000 in debt. And she's certain she's going to law school, not because she wants to go to law school, but because that's the only way she'll ever be able to pay back the debt that she's going to accrue.
Yeah.
Do you mind? You have to give me the numbers exactly, but when you finished up at Full Sail, what were the? But okay, let me ask you this. Oh, hold on just a second. I got to check something.
Okay.
I got a technical problem. Why is my battery going low? Okay, something's not plugged in.
I know. I was checking mine. I was like, "Ooh, is my battery going down?"
All right. Well, that was fun. Exactly how I planned things to go. Just all of a sudden we lost. I had like by probably a millimeter did not get my power cable plugged all the way into my laptop because I'm technically proficient that way. All right, looks like everything is still recording. Yep, my recording's restarting though. Okay. All right, that'll be fun to splice back together at the end. So Jamie, I was talking about Jamie going to NYU, having a lot of debt. When you graduated from college, ballpark figure, roughly how much debt were you looking at?
Close to $200,000.
Okay.
Because what a lot of people don't realize is when you take out the loans, you're not just taking out loans for the tuition. Mm-hmm. It's the housing, the food, and everything else. So being in LA, even though I had certain classes paid for, that wasn't necessarily the case when it came to housing, because USC didn't have housing past freshman year. So I had to live off campus, and right around campus was extremely expensive. So then going to Full Sail and it being expensive, and I couldn't get any federal help anymore because I had already done, those loans. I took out private loans, thinking, oh yeah, it's gonna be fine, and they were variable.
Oh yeah. So
that became a challenge, and my generation. This isn't really talked about a lot. Congress sets the tuition rate or the interest rate Well, they hiked up the interest rates when I took out loans. It was about a 2-year process when it was over 3%. So even though I've been able to start reducing that because of the new laws, for a very long time I didn't. So with housing and tuition and food, I came out pretty bad, paying close to or over $2,000 a month on loans, on student loans in itself.
Now, are you? I mean, that's the impact, and we'll talk about as much as you're comfortable talking about. How's that impacting you now? How much? What's the status on the loans now?
So I'm right under 100,000.
Well done.
Yeah,
well done.
I've been trying as hard as I can on that. Because some of them are private, I can't get forgiveness. I've struggled, to be honest, over the years. When I first came back to Dallas and started working, I owned a place, but I haven't owned a place in 10 years. Partly it's because I traveled for 210 days out of the year. I purposely took jobs so I didn't have to pay for living. The organizations that I work with, they put me in housing. They also pay, so my industry, they feed us because we can't leave. So they provide food and they provide housing, basically. So I've been able over the years to just, if I'm not working, couch jump or live in, a hotel room. And so that's been kind of my life. But on saying that, I'll just say that I've had some really awesome experiences because of that, first and foremost. But with COVID, I didn't have a place to come back to. So I was lucky that my parents were like, yeah, come on and let's deal with this pandemic together, and which was nice. So I was lucky that way. And not a lot of people do get that. So.
So what have you been doing the last year during the pandemic? How's that affected work?
So I was supposed to have my best year ever.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean, I was probably going to get close to 100,000, so my line of work, I mean, you get a day rate. So from like 300, like PA work is like $100 a day all the way up to $1,000 a day, depending on what you're doing. And I had worked up my ranks enough to where, and booked enough to where I was going to make a record year for me. And I was on a job and everything stopped and everything went away. And for a year, for 6 months, I didn't have a job, which was really, really tough. Luckily I had savings to help me. Being a freelancer, you're always trying to do that. And well, now I guess, so the industry's starting to come back. And then there was this great company called Falcon Events. That was an old boss of mine from Friedman. And he started this company that did online conferences. So we live streamed online conferences. So basically all these doctors all still needed the conferences to go to, but they can't go physically. So they had us come in, we pre-recorded videos using Zoom, and we live streamed these lectures and live questions. And I basically was controlling it. So I was basically like, if you, in the news, when you see people like changing shots and stuff like that behind the scenes, that's basically what we ended up doing for conferences. So that's been most of my jobs lately. And then, like you said, a little bit of filming.
The innovation that took place a year ago, whenever all this stuff, because like for us, we shut down once the SAT and ACT got postponed for a couple of months. We kind of shut everything down for a while, but we were able to continue until we knew what they were going to do. We just moved everything online so quickly.
Yeah.
And that's it. I remember seeing conferences and stuff that people were still doing. Kim's gone to a couple of them this year that were entirely online conferences. But I guess it's the kind of thing you're talking about. The continuing education had to keep happening for doctors, for professionals. You told me when we were booking this session, you told me you've got a gig starting up tomorrow.
I do with Falcon.
Okay.
So I actually don't know what the conference is. So after this, I actually have to run and get debriefed at Falcon headquarters, and it's kind of always an interesting experience because a lot of people don't know what's going on. But when I sit down, I have like 4 to 5 computers in front of me, about 7 screens to 8 screens, switchboard, sound, audio, and you're just you plan out your day the next day of what needs to come out, and you're just do. And it can be pretty stressful, but it's it's nice. It's something that I've done in the past, so it's nice to get my feet back into that.
Okay. Have you been able to do much work the last 6 months or so?
Yeah. So one of the first filming that happened here in Dallas was the Dallas Cowboys cheerleading TV show.
Okay.
I've worked with them for 3 years. So, I got a phone call saying, hey, we're going to be doing it. And the industry has been taking it very, very seriously, which has been really nice. So this, like I said, this was the first one that really kind of came out with it. And they locked us up for 2 months in a hotel, put us in a complete bubble. And all we were allowed to do was on set in our hotel room.
So let me hear how torturous this has
definitely a
been.
challenge.
You were in a complete bubble with the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders.
Well, yes.
Everyone listening is feeling really bad for you right now. It was really bad for you that had to happen.
Yes, but it's not like I was able to interact with them all that much. So,
okay.
And Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, all of you, I love you guys. I'm friends with a lot of you, so.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say not many of them are going to listen to the podcast. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. I mean, we are getting dozens of downloads a month now, so I'm going to say that possibly that might not happen. But that's cool. Yeah, and I remember a couple months ago the Tom Cruise meltdown, right? But he was so right about stuff. He's like, the people that were taking stuff seriously and focusing on what they had to focus on because so many other things we don't realize depended on that. And his point and his meltdown I thought was really good. Never thought I'd find Tom Cruise, I'd find myself saying, that. But, okay, so you got a conference gig. And then one thing you mentioned at the very top was music festivals, that you've been doing a lot of music festivals. What are you doing there?
So kind of like as a grip, I'm setting it up. So I run teams and manage teams from building fences where the porta potties are going to go to, it's a huge endeavor of, how people are going to come in and out of the music festival safely. How are they going to park because a lot of those places, they don't have, or people don't want to drive because they're going to be drinking. So your Uber lots, how are they going to get picked up? Where are they going to get picked up? How are you going to make sure that their wait time in the car is not that long? And then, like I said, I was also the turf manager for EDC, which is one of the things that I guess my nickname is in the industry, in that industry now, is Turf Man. Because, like I said, we did a world record on it. We were actually going to have the Guinness Book of World Records show up this last year before COVID hit to actually be in the world record book. So, I just run teams depending on what they need and figure it out as I go, really. There's so many great people who have been doing it for a long time that knew that it wasn't. This isn't what I have done for the last 10 years. I didn't, and they knew that. Like I walked in and was like, look, guys, if I'm doing something wrong, tell me. Or if there's a different terminology for one of this piece of equipment, tell me. Because the film industry is known to name things differently than any other industry, just to be, who they are. Like an extension cord isn't an extension cord; it's a stinger. So if you're in the industry world and somebody, you're walking around and you hear somebody say, "Hey, pick up that stinger," and be like, "Oh, you're in the film industry. I know that." So walking into the music festival industry was definitely kind of a jaw drop, figure out quickly kind of experience. But it's also been a lot of fun. The people are amazing. Like I said, when I had questions, they were always there for me.
What's on the horizon, man? What are you working on down the line?
So a couple things, I guess. I mean, still freelancing. Falcon is looking on doing more filming, which is going to be awesome. So I'll be able to start getting back into that. I guess personally, I actually want to start my own YouTube show.
Okay.
So I guess getting a little more personal. So about 6 years ago, my oldest brother kept telling me that I needed to start this YouTube show because he had just had kids and they watch YouTube. And he kept saying, he's like, "Eric, they want to see what Uncle Eric is doing." And he kept telling me this constantly. In June, he passed away last year.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And right before it, luckily because of COVID, I was able to talk to him on an everyday basis because, his church had to go immediately online, even though his church has already done that. I was consulting with him and making his online presence even more savvy, I guess, because it's, online is all about videos and audio and my expertise. So right before he passed away, he was like, "So when are you going to do that next adventure?" And because, my kids are waiting, and don't make me tell them. And like literally the week before he passed away, he told his kids, he's like, "You know what? Uncle Eric has always wanted to do this." And so I get a phone call now, every week. He's like, "Hey, Eric, have you done it yet?" I'm like, "I'm working on it." So hopefully by June that starts to happen.
What's the YouTube channel going to be called? Let's plug it.
Okay, so it's called That Next Adventure. It's me going on adventures. And basically, I'll have a goal. Like, I want to go find a fossil. And I'll go take videos and also do photos. So after the adventure happens, at the very end of it, I will post my favorite 5 to 10 photos of the trip. And yeah, so, and it can be any kind of adventures.
Okay. Are you seeing this as something that you'll do? This is so cool. I had no idea. Are you seeing this as something like my boys love Dude Perfect. Like, there's a new Dude Perfect out tonight, and so I know we'll be watching a new Dude Perfect tonight. They love Dude Perfect, and so are you seeing this? Not obviously Dude Perfect-esque, but something like that where you'll like be filming it, maybe kind of a Dude Perfect Wildcrats kind of combination, right? Where is that the idea? What's the idea behind it?
I guess when I first started thinking about doing it, I was a fan of Josh Gates. His TV shows, he did like Monster Quest. I think the newest one is Exploring. I don't remember, but basically, he found something that he wanted to go research and find. Like treasure hunting was one of the ones, and he went on the actual treasure hunt of this long lost gold, and it put him in some really weird situations. Also, because I like meeting people. Bourdain, of eating food and stuff like that, and with him passing away, I kind of wanted to combine the two. So go experience a location, but also have a goal in mind. So like one, I want to go to Jefferson, I think it's Jefferson Hotel, which Jefferson City is considered one of the most haunted places in the state of Texas. Okay. I want to go stay at that actual hotel, find out why is it haunted, or what is the concept of being haunted. haven't ever had a haunted experience, so I'm a little skeptical, but I want to walk in and actually try to do like a ghost hunter kind of atmosphere, but also find out what is the unique capabilities of this town as well. So yeah, I mean, I have different ones like hiking, obviously finding the greatest hiking trails out there, which will be one of the episodes every year. There's going to be 12, one a month is the game plan. And yeah, so hopefully it ends up going well.
Have you done, and I don't know any about the business behind it, but I mean, the funding parts of things like that, what's the plan there?
Right now I'm funding it.
Okay.
Hopefully once I get viewerships and stuff like that, that I can get some sponsors. One of the big funny things is, as you probably remember, I always have sunglasses on the top of my head. I didn't for this, but
because the headphones.
Yeah, you know, I had to do the headphones. But hopefully, like a sunglass place wants to sponsor me.
Okay.
And that would be nice. But the real reason why I want to do it is because I want to do it for my niece and nephew, to be honest. And if it does go big and I can make a career out of that, that would be awesome. But you know, I've always believed, and this is something kind of going back to you on schooling and everything like that. If you find something that you're passionate on, you can make money doing it. Yeah. And that's, you know, like I don't do it necessarily for the money. I do it because I'm passionate about it, and then the money will come after a while.
Yeah, that's really, and it's the whole idea of passion versus purpose or whatever, or you know, if you're, I don't know, if you're good at something, you'll work at it until you get, I mean, if you love something, you'll work at it until you get good at it. So I've been lucky that I knew I wanted to teach people things since like 9th grade. That's when I knew that's what really got me going, and so that's led into this. That's cool. So it's called That Next Adventure. Yep. It's going to be. Have you already got the YouTube channel set up and stuff?
So I have the website that I'm building right now.
Okay.
So it's been slow going because of all of a sudden like things like kicked off, and it's like, oh, Eric, you need to work now. So I'm building the website right now, and I'm waiting for it to be just a little prettier, and I'm going to start filming. And then, like I said, in June is the game plan is to knock out, start actually producing it on the YouTube channel. And, yeah, and hopefully it gets to be seen.
Well, so I did want to talk a little bit because the freelancing thing, the financing thing, all of that we talked about a little bit. You hear people. I listen to Joe Rogan all the time, and the guys he's talking with, I always wonder about this part of it. I mean, obviously for Rogan, he's done well. He's got money in the bank, and then the podcast is taking care of itself. So, yep. But then he has people on, and you hear them talk. And knowing that those comedians couldn't work for the last year for the most part, right? They had to survive on whatever savings they had. And you mentioned that a minute ago, like the first 6 months after COVID happened and everything shut down, you were looking at savings and how you were going to make it there. What is it? I mean, on the interim, you were set to make 6 figures last year and then it didn't happen. In the interim times, as far as, I guess one question is, I got so many questions and I'm not getting to any of them. One question is, does anybody coach you on like, hey, I know you're making this great contract now, but you need to think about the fact that you might not have a contract for however long it's going to be afterward?
So early on, I wasn't freelance. And I was working with a freelance. And he was kind of my mentor. And I got to travel across the United States with 2 of them, 2 mentors. And they were both freelancers. And they kind of taught me. So it was mentioned in college at Full Sail, and they kind of, they talk about it, but they don't go into detail into it. I think it was like one class, they were like, oh yeah, every time you get a paycheck, put 10% away or 20% away. But in practice, you don't think about that. You just get this giant check for, I just worked for 3 months straight on this amazing gig, and I got $30,000 check, And I'm like, let's go. Like I'm set. Right. But that's not the actual case, because I don't know. Once I lose a job, I don't know when my next job is. So, I learned early on, I guess, after coming out of college, the real life of weight that hit, going, oh, I got to pay those bills. I have to do these things. And like I said, I had a great support group that, talked me through it. But I also know a lot of my friends that came out of Full Sail, they didn't, and they're no longer in the industry. They're not, it's just what it was. They got the only job they could, and because of that, because they're not getting paid enough, they're just barely, walking by, so they can't spend money to make money, so to speak. And in this industry, you have to do that. I have to spend the money on the lights. I have to spend the money, which is kind of funny because I know the lighting on me right now is not great and the camera isn't. It's like, oh yeah, the lighting guy, doesn't have the great lighting. And I keep looking at myself and I'm like, man, if I could just do this. No. But yeah, we have to spend the money to make the money. And if you can't do that, and you won't be able to make it to some extent. Yeah. But if you are a hard worker, I will say, even my buddies that I got taught from, so like the top people in the DFW area, the top producers, the top, one's a producer, one's a DP, they didn't go to college. They went straight into the industry when they were 18 years old. They became a PA, and they learned on the job.
What does PA mean? A production assistant?
Yes.
Okay.
So they handed out walkies and always had batteries to hand to people, and, went and grabbed the actor when the actor needed to come on set, and, and then they worked their way up slowly. They found an interest by watching, and then started asking questions to the grips. And then all of a sudden, from a grip, or from a PA, they became a grip, and from a grip, they ended up becoming key grip, and then from key grip, they ended up, learning lighting, so they went to gaffing or whatever it is, and then, so they found their way working up, which is kind of cool in my industry, but at the same time, I'm glad that I did go to college. So when my cousin was actually asking me about that, I was like, okay, go to college, get a degree, because you never know what path you're going to have to go into. But don't do what I did. Go to like a state school, get your film degree. It's going to be fine, but you're still going to learn on the job when you get out. And just know that, because even Full Sail, they were like, we'll teach you everything. I walked on set and, my boss was like, nothing.
That's so my best case scenario, that professor who's teaching you is teaching you how it was when he was doing that, right? So unless you have that professor who's actually in the industry now doing stuff, they know what it was like when they did it. And that my wife's grandfather would talk about this all the time from the 1930s when he went to college. He went to what was, I don't know what it's called then, but it's now UTA, to go to flights to learn to be a plane mechanic or something like that. And Bob, he talks about he got there and they were doing birchwood and glue on linen wings, and he was working at the airport on aluminum airplanes. He's like, this is not where this is right now. You're not teaching. So that was always Bob's big passion. But it's true, because that professor's gotten locked into how it was when they did it, and they know how to teach that. It's very difficult to stay on top of stuff. So when Bob would talk about when he would get an engineer graduating, he knew it was going to take them 2 years to get caught up on what the industry, that first year, what that industry was like right now, because they just couldn't do it in the schools. And
kind of saying that, I think the best teachers and the best professors, because one of my professors actually at USC said this, is my job is not to teach you. My job is to teach you where to look or how to find that information. And that was me understanding from that point on, of going, that's what teachers in college are really trying to do. Not not grade me on my papers, which all have to happen, but after I leave, where and how do I get the information that I need to do to succeed?
That's cool. Yeah. And that is, I had a chance to talk to Mike Miles a couple of years ago. Mike was the superintendent for Dallas ISD for a few years. Had a lot of controversy when he was there because Mike was trying to turn things around. But he talked about, like, the number one thing kids have to learn right now is how to learn. You have to be open to it. And everyone talks about this. I think the podcast episode before this one with Richard Smith. He's a hiring exec for an IT firm, and his thing was, hey, you've got to be able to learn how to learn stuff, because the programming language, just in his career alone, he's had to learn like 8 or 10 different programming languages to stay on top of what's required in it. So cool. I'm so excited about that next adventure, about you doing that, and you're funding it. Okay. There's this outside chance that someone listening to this might be like, hey, I want to be involved. If someone wanted to be involved with you, how would they find out about it? Like, so the website isn't up yet.
The website's not up yet.
So is the YouTube channel, like, can they go look at the YouTube channel at all right now? Is there anything on there?
No, I'm going to be, that's actually on the to-do list for next week, for me to actually create that. However, if you do want to contact me, the best way is, you can Facebook me at Eric Nietubicz. You can also email me. Like I said, probably Facebook would be the best. Just go ahead and message me. But you can also email me at eric@nietubicz.com. It's a crazy last name.
I'll put a link to it in the stuff, so people don't have to trust. But I always love the fact that, like, you have severe dyslexia and the hardest last name in the universe to pronounce.
Well, you want to get the more ironic moments is that my mom is a librarian and a head librarian of Carrollton Farmers Branch School District. So one of the most dyslexic kids, and mother is in charge of every book in a school district. So
that's awesome. What's your dad do?
He's an internet security officer.
Okay.
So
Very
he does audits and also was a CFO as well.
Cool.
So
I remember, because the last time I saw you was that I'm sure because I sprung it on you at the restaurant. I was like, I think that's Eric, and you were wearing your USC shirt, and I was like, I know that's got to be Eric, because what other kid that looks exactly like Eric would have a USC shirt on? So let's see. Okay, well, we talked about planning ahead, because I wanted to ask about that planning ahead piece, because my other niece, when she was trying to go into this stuff, she wanted to be a writer. And she was looking at a very expensive, at the time, like $60,000 a year liberal arts college, private school, versus a public school right in her backyard. And both schools were in her backyard. She was going to be able to, wasn't going to have to, but she was like, and I told my sister at the time, I was like, look, if she goes to that school, the liberal arts college, it's going to cost, she's going to have to do loans, and she's going to graduate with at least, we know, $120,000 of extra loans. Like, that's just because that's how much more it's going to cost her. And at the time, I was actually doing freelance writing stuff because I was just starting this business and I wanted to make sure I could feed my children. And so I was doing freelance writing. And I said, my best freelance gig right now is maybe paying 9 cents a word. So have Michaela just divide 120,000 by 0.09 and figure out how many words she's going to have to write to pay back those loans. And so Michaela went for the public university. Yep. And I don't know. My advice probably never even got to her. But she's a sharp kid, so she had her head on her shoulders. But she ended up doing some great stuff. So you talk about the adventure, because she ends up with this young writers program at the public university, and she ends up like kind of not running it, but like learning, like being under the person that runs it, and does that for 3 years. Oh, wow. Like, they actually asked her to delay her graduation a semester because they needed her there, and if she'd already graduated, they couldn't pay her, or they couldn't pay her at the same rate. They'd have to do something different. So can you delay graduation for 1 semester? So she reworked her graduation plan so she could do that. I'm probably misremembering everything I just said, so if Michaela ever hears this. but it's really crazy how the adventures happen. And back to just kudos on you and getting the debt paid down like you have. I don't know. Okay, so the other questions that I like to ask people are about, if you think back to high school and things that people said, you have to worry about this, you have to worry about that. What are things that you found you were super concerned about, and then when you got to college were like the biggest eye-opening parts of things? Like you were at USC for 2 years then?
3.
You were there for 3. You were so close.
I was close.
And then you went to Tech and they didn't take any of your credits because Tech's notoriously stingy about taking credits.
Yep. Found that out the hard way.
Yeah. So you go to, so what are the things that you thought you knew when you walked on campus at USC, and then you got the nothing Jon Snow moment where you suddenly learned it?
I guess the first one is me. How I dealt with so one, I guess acting. Like I thought I was this hot shot, and
you were in the pond that you were living in at the time.
Yeah, and then I walk in and I'm with people that have been acting for years, actually making money acting, and is in my class with me.
And then you kind of feel like, well, I got all-star cast at U1 Act and State.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's a cool story.
Right. And you're like, and then they were like, yeah, have you seen Sky High? I'm Speed. I'm like, which is a good friend of mine as well. And then all of a sudden you walk into these classes and you have these amazing teachers that really understand their craft so well. And then you walk into another class and it's Gates McFadden, which is Beverly Crusher on Star Trek, is your teacher all of a sudden. So somebody that you've like looked up to is now.
I love her.
And sweet, amazing woman. And you walk into class and you're like, And then with USC, this was the cool thing about going to USC, was they did have a pool of people being able to come in and talk to us. Mm-hmm. So we had some really awesome actors coming in and speaking to us. And in my career, I've also met so many people, we'll just say it that way.
In your industry, it's hard to do that, right? I know you have to be careful.
You do. So, I mean, like, I try not to name bomb. We'll say it that way in these kind of situations. But the cool thing is, or what I didn't, going back to your question, I didn't realize how more I needed to learn. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I did not know is what you're there for college for is just to learn a craft or do your degree and all that. But the other steps, which is, I only focused on theater. I didn't focus on finances. If I had taken a finance class, that would have helped me tremendously over the years. And looking back on it, I wish I had done that. The other one is being alone. Like I wanted to run away from Texas. And then all of a sudden, it's a 25-hour or 22, 23 drive to get to California and an expensive plane ride. I was stuck. So when everybody left campus, I was still there because I couldn't fly home. So being, in a location like that, that was kind of a hardship of going, wait, I actually do miss my family. So
I'm not going to tell them that, but
no, I tell them now. They know. And the other one is, I guess and this one's looking back, that the name of a college isn't necessarily, it's great, but it's not the end of the world. It's, if Bill Gates went to USC or Texas Tech, Bill Gates will still be Bill Gates. You know what I'm saying? Like, you find your ways and you find knowledge on your path. And we get wrapped up into my senior year of like, I'm going to USC. Yeah. Like I got in there. This is awesome. Like my whole life is, set because I've got to the right college. And you're just beginning your life.
Yeah.
So
it's the episode 13 of the podcast was with Chelsea, and she talks about going off to UNLV because she wanted to get out of Texas. She wanted to get out of Dallas and go off, and then she gets to UNLV and she's like, yeah, this is not what I expected. And then she's back at UTA. I think that spring semester she's back at UTA and ends up still graduating in 3 years. But, it's definitely a lot of that senior year is taken. Because, I mean, you and D'Angelo, who, D'Angelo went to the UCLA that same year. And you guys were, Creekview was just ecstatic about you two guys headed off to do great things. And D'Angelo's doing some, I want to get him on the podcast. It scares the shit out of me to get him on the podcast, but I do want to get him on. He will definitely be the most controversial person I've had on, or the most potential controversial person that I had on.
Yep.
But he's doing such cool stuff. I mean, he really is.
Yeah.
But
and not
cool.
just D'Angelo. I mean, Ross Leopold. I don't know if you remember Ross.
I don't think I taught him.
You didn't see. Well, he came out of our class too, and he was writing, I think, for Jay Leno for a while.
Oh yeah.
Or he was writing for somebody on the late night shows. Like, I was lucky to be a part of a class that was just phenomenal. D'Angelo is doing some really cool stuff. He got popular very quickly in the Europe area on his singing and just launched. I still get updates from him every once in a while. It's a little crazy.
I follow him on Facebook. It's definitely a little crazy.
Yeah.
But and Kelly Jewett, who graduated, I think a year behind you, or a year ahead of you. He's still got his band. I mean, he was like episode 10. I got to talk to him on episode 10 of the podcast. But his band's done really well in Europe, and they've got a pretty good following here. And he talked about how COVID's affected that industry as well. All right. Well, any final thoughts? We talked about connecting with you on your email or at Facebook at Eric N. I'll put so people don't. They can see your name on the screen, but and it'll be in the link to the podcast itself. But I'll be sure and link everything there, so no one has to try to type it in. Any other? Last thoughts. This has been awesome. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Things you want to share?
I guess the first one is if you do have if the audience, if they have any ideas for an adventure, please send it out as well. Not just to get in contact with me, but also ideals. Also, I guess I would say is don't give up. Just because you're out of college and you might not, or even years out of college, and you're listening to this right now, hard work pays off. And I know that for a fact. Even though this wasn't where I thought I was going to be, I'm still in a really better place than I was yesterday. And I know that my career can launch like that. And that goes with everybody. I mean, if you put in the work, like we were saying earlier, stuff will succeed, and you just have to stick with it sometimes.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, thank you for giving us an hour of your time, and I'll wrap it up. Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would help us reach more people if you could rate and review the show wherever you listen and share it on social media. If you have ideas for future episodes, please email me at shane@bybecollegeprep.com. Thanks for listening.